Season 2 Reloaded is finally here, and with it we did get a few shotgun changes, one of which was mentioned in the patch notes, one of which wasn't. So today I'm going to share with you guys everything that's changed, give you guys the new best class setup for the Lockwood 680, and talk about a few other things. So if that sounds good to you, let's just go ahead and hop right into it, and as always, timestamps in the description below if you want to hop to a certain part of the video. So with the patch notes, for both multiplayer and Warzone, we have one change that was mentioned, and that is with the Lockwood 680, and this one's going to hurt, guys, but basically the barrels now all have the same pellet count, which is capped at 6 regardless of the ammo. Now if you remember, the best barrel that we had was basically that Defender heavy barrel, because even though it was a little bit slower, it gave you 10 pellets, and while that didn't change the damage, you essentially had your pellets doing the same amount of damage, but you had 10 of them rather than 6 or 4 on the smaller barrels. You had 10 chances of hitting the enemy, so it was super consistent and felt really good up at close range, and it was a fantastic barrel, even though again it was a little bit on the slower side when it comes to mobility. Now that's kind of gone out the window, which is sort of a nerf to that barrel but also a buff to the smaller barrels, because now everything is just at 6. I don't know why it's not 8 pellets. Maybe that's to keep it different from the other Bryson 800 and Bryson 890 pump actions, but yeah, it's at 6 rather than 8, and rather than 10 and 4, it's just 6. So the big question here is that last barrel really worth it for the Lockwood 680 anymore? And I gotta say, for Warzone in particular, I don't think so. 6 shells is more than enough for most engagements. You could maybe argue for trios and quads if you want to have 10 shells, go for it, but given how it's so much slower than the other hammer forged long barrel and you have less range, there's not many reasons to use this thing over that other barrel, except for the fact that you get 10 shells. Your sprint to fire is a lot slower, your aim down sight speed is a lot slower, it's just clunkier overall, and since you don't have 10 pellets, in my opinion, it's just not worth it anymore. So for Warzone, I would say stick with that first barrel. It's going to give you more range, and you're going to have a better sprint to fire and aim down sight speed, and just better mobility in general with a better movement speed as well. It's just kind of a no-brainer to me at this point, and I'm sad to say that because I really did love the 10 pellet barrel. It's so good, but it's just a thing of the past now, guys. I'm sorry. Now for multiplayer, you could make the argument a little bit better for the last barrel because a lot of people die in one shot. If you want to go for feeds where you kill 7 or 8 people in a row, which is kind of crazy on shipment or something, then you could make an argument for that last barrel having 10 shells. But in most cases, again, you're probably better off with that first barrel. So now I wanted to show you guys my updated Warzone best class for the Lockwood 680. This pained me. I had to go on the community app and change my loadout for that 10 pellet build. That was so painful, but basically it's the same thing, except I swapped out the barrel for the Bryson Hammer Forged long one, and also I'm rocking the Matuzak X for a skeletonized guard. If anything, that guard attachment, that is one that you can replace. If you want to have better mobility, this is a good attachment for that. If you want to have a better tack stance spread, for example, you could use something like the Bruin Bastion angle grip, or a laser if you want a little bit better sprint to fire speed as well. Or also you could rock the Bryson choke, because you are going to get a tighter aim down sight spread than if you're just rocking this build here with only the Crown Breaker choke, but that's if you want to go full aim down sights and not tack stance. But since I'm a tack stance guy, this is what I went with, and the Crown Breaker choke for me is one of the best attachments for that. Next up, I want to move on to talk about the Haymaker aftermarket part, the mag lift attachment, because this did in fact catch a little bit of an adjustment. Now if you remember, before Season 2 Reloaded, this thing was bugged because its minimum damage range was doing more damage than its first drop off, which made it deal really crazy damage and have a great time to kill it really far, which was definitely unintended. Now that's been changed, so its minimum damage now has been adjusted, and now it's sitting at 52 rather than 72, which means it is a 6-shot kill, which time to kill practical wise is about 600 milliseconds, which is much more in line with where it should be. I still think that's pretty damn good. Like, all things considered, that time to kill for that kind of distance is pretty nutty. This is definitely comparable to some meta SMGs, but of course you have to take into account you only have 5 pellets, and the spread is pretty tight, so you can make it really tight, especially if you're going for tack stance. It can be incredibly tight, which means it's harder to hit your pellets on target, but of course you have to be more accurate, so it's kind of an even trade-off. Now we'll just have to see how this plays out. I was getting demolished by this thing the other day, so maybe this adjustment will actually take care of that, but I do think this is still a very strong aftermarket part, and probably one of the better ways to run the Haymaker in my opinion. Now it's debatable if it's better than the actual Dragon's Breath version of the Haymaker, but this thing still on its own packs a serious punch, and if you got the skill for it, you can make this thing work wonders for you. As for any other stealth changes, I haven't really found anything yet. I'm still going to be doing a lot of digging. Of course, there's lots to look through, so I will try my best to find anything that I can and make videos as they come up. But also, if you find anything that's weird or different different or slightly off, make sure to let me know down below in the comments because I'm always curious and always willing to check those things out. But that's pretty much going to do it for this video, guys. Those are two of the biggest changes that I could find. But as always, I want to know down below in the comments, what are your thoughts on these changes? Are you as sad as I am about that 10 pellet barrel being gone now essentially and having to rely on the first barrel only? Are you sad about the Haymaker maglift aftermarket part? And with all that being said, guys, I will see you in the next video.